What if anxiety isn't the actual emotion you've been struggling with? And if you think I'm nuts, hear me out. Welcome back to the Broken and Brave podcast. Today, I want to share something that I don't think I've talked about publicly in quite some time. And it's been coming up over and over and over again inside of Brave Academy. Now, it's also something that completely changed how I understood my own anxiety through my healing journey and made a big difference for me. For years, I believed that anxiety was the problem. I thought if I could just get rid of it, then everything else would be better, right? What I've come to realize, though, is that anxiety often isn't the emotion that we are actually experiencing. It's sometimes the emotion that's keeping us from experiencing all the things underneath it. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. I want you for a moment just to picture a young child for a minute. Let's go to newborn. Newborn comes out into the world. I was going to say comes out of the womb. It comes into the world expressing emotion without questioning it, whether it's okay or not okay. They just express. When they're sad, they cry. When they're hungry, they cry or scream. When they have a dirty diaper, they cry. And they never get down on themselves for it. Okay, let's move forward a little bit throughout life into a toddler, like an early toddler. They continue that pattern. When they're sad, they cry. When they're frustrated, they yell. When they're scared, they run to somebody that they can trust. When they're excited, they jump up and down. They don't ask, should I be feeling this? They don't. They don't ask, am I too emotional? They don't tell themselves, I need to calm down. They simply experience what is coming up for them. And then what happens 5 minutes later? Something that might seem remarkable. They're laughing, they're playing, and they're completely immersed in the present moment. Have you ever asked yourself why? Have you noticed that and just kind of brushed it to the side or got curious with is there something to that? They allowed the emotion to move all the way through. Okay, so if you think of an emotional cycle as like a rainbow or an inverted U, their body completed the emotional cycle. Because children, babies, toddlers, young children, they don't have the emotional rules, problems. They are not suppressing their emotions. They're just allowing their emotions to flow because that's all that they know to do. And then what they get afterward is relief and presence. Now, as we get older, many of us slowly learn certain emotions are not okay. After hearing over and over and over again something along the lines of, stop crying, you're overreacting, be strong, calm down, there's nothing to be upset about, it's not that big of a deal. Or maybe nobody ever said those words to you directly. I know they did to me, but maybe they didn't say that to you. What did you learn? You probably still learned something along the lines of, if I express sadness, someone gets uncomfortable, okay? And for those who did hear that messaging, when I express anger, maybe I get rejected. When I express fear, I'm told to stop worrying or I'll be fine. If I express disappointment, someone immediately tries to fix it or tells me that I'm not grateful, okay? Think about that for a moment. What happens? Without us realizing, right? Because a child is just trying to do their best. They're trying to make their caregivers, their parents, authority figures happy. So without realizing it, we begin to interrupt our emotions before they've had a chance to go through that rainbow that I mentioned, before they make it through that full emotional cycle, which, by the way, chemically, that cycle is 60 to 90 seconds. Okay? I want you to pause and just take a minute to think about what most of us do on a day-to-day basis. We distract ourselves, we stay busy, analyze, overthink, scroll, clean, work, Google, reassure ourselves, tell ourselves, I shouldn't feel this way. I just need to think more positively. I need to get over it. Why can't I just control my thoughts? All these types of things, right? Can you relate to some of that? All of it? Nothing's inherently wrong with the things that I listed, but generally what's happening is we're trying to fix the emotion or make it go away before we've actually experienced the emotion. If we go back to childhood, young toddler, they're not trying to fix the emotion. They're just feeling it. And you might say, well, I don't want to act like that. I don't just want to be crying, willy-nilly. I'm not saying that you will. Please don't misinterpret. I'm just trying to make the point that they allow the cycle to go through. Okay? And instead, the vast majority of adults are showing up cutting it off, not allowing it to go through, trying to fix it or make it go away before they actually experience it, and not setting aside any time to allow experiencing emotions. So the cycle's just cut off over and over and over again. And over time, we get incredibly skilled at interrupting our emotions, at cutting off that experience. And then eventually, if we fast forward later to our lives, we don't just disconnect from difficult emotions. We disconnect from ourselves. We stop noticing what we're feeling. We stop trusting our body. We stop recognizing our needs. We stop asking ourselves what we actually want. And oftentimes we lose touch with what we want. It's not that we just stop asking. We lose touch with it. We don't know. Can you relate to that? Even if you just pause me for a second, to what extent has that been your experience in some ways? And what has been happening instead? If you're like most people, you've become an expert at managing emotions instead of experiencing them. And I want to describe what I mean by that. Immediately trying to calm yourself down instead of getting curious about what you're feeling. Maybe overthinking instead of allowing yourself to feel. Or staying busy so that you don't have to sit with what's happening inside of you. Or telling yourself, I'm fine, even though your body is telling a very different story. Or maybe jumping straight into problem solving instead of making space for an emotion, for disappointment, for example. Or seeking reassurance before you've even asked yourself, what do I want right now? Or maybe just trying to control the environment so that you don't have to experience uncertainty, or so that you can reduce how much uncertainty you experience. Maybe you've convinced yourself in some way, oh yeah, I've moved on, when in reality, did you actually just learn to avoid what still hurts? Ultimately, the vast majority of people, I will say, I could be biased because these are the people that I interact with. Those who I come in contact with have become incredibly good at functioning. Okay. And at the same time, while feeling less and less connected to themselves. And this is where this becomes really interesting, because most people believe anxiety is the emotion, but like I alluded to earlier, it often isn't. Anxiety is often what you're most aware of. And then the other emotions are suppressed underneath it. Grief, sadness, disappointment, shame, loneliness, anger, vulnerability. And I'm going to reference a movie real quick. If you have seen Inside Out 2 in particular, they're both amazing. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you have seen it, watch it again, because they demonstrate this beautifully. And I think the vast majority of people, it sort of goes over their head, where they actually say often anxiety is mismanagement of other emotions. And then they show the other emotions literally getting exiled to the subconscious. Exactly this, but demonstrated through a cartoon. It's beautiful. Highly recommend. Okay, back to where we were. What was I saying? Pause and reflect on the motto of anxiety for a moment. If we just sit here and think about like, okay, what is anxiety trying to do? Anxiety might say, let's think about it. Whereas grief might say, okay, stay with me. Anxiety might say, let's figure this out. Let's do research and just get the answer. Sadness might say, feel this. Anxiety is probably going to say, do something, get shit done. And vulnerability might say, stay present. So for many, thinking has just felt more comfortable than feeling, simply because that's what many of us practice. Overthinking is under feeling. But if you've practiced it over and over and over again, the nervous system has gotten better at it. And one of the biggest shifts in my own healing was when I realized, okay, I'm not just anxious. I had this aha moment that I was resisting feeling many emotions, although this would still apply even if there was just one that you were resisting feeling. Just find one. What emotion do I resist feeling? Start there and get curious. The moment that something uncomfortable showed up, I started doing what? And you might be able to resonate with this. Thinking, analyzing, problem solving, controlling, trying to make it go away instead of just simply allowing myself to experience it. And at that time, my anxiety, it was pretty constant, just all the time. And I didn't realize that that was in part due to me cutting off the emotional cycle of my emotions because I was trying to make them stop. I was doing that not because I was born that way, but because that's what I was taught. That's what was modeled to me. That's what I thought I was supposed to be doing. But the impact on me, and if you resonate with this, it wasn't just for me. It was my relationships too. And I want to talk through that a bit in case you've never thought about it. When we are uncomfortable with our own emotions, we are not comfortable with everyone else's emotions. Now, I know there will be a few naysayers listening to this, so I'll say generally we become uncomfortable with other people's emotions. So I want you to just think about what is most commonly said when somebody expresses a quote unquote negative emotion. Just pause and think about it for a second. Look on the bright side. Everything happens for a reason. Well, at least blah, 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 blah. Or it could be worse. Or you're going to get through this. Just stay positive. Or if someone feels disappointment and then immediately the other person starts trying to solve the problem. Or somebody feels grief and the other person tries to cheer them up or just totally avoid bringing it up. Or somebody feels anger and whoever they're talking to encourages them to calm down. Or somebody feels fear. What happens? Others rush to reassure them before they've even finished talking. Now, I want you to hear me out on this. The vast majority of the time, the people that you're interacting with, they have good intentions. They're not trying to interrupt your emotional cycle. They don't even know. They're trying to help, and they're doing the best that they know how to do. But what's happening when they don't hold space for the emotion is the nervous system is saying like, okay, this emotion feels uncomfortable. Let's get out of it as quickly as possible. Not a logical thought, what's happening in the nervous system. And I want you to just pause and think about, have you experienced this before? Have you had the experience where you've shown up in this way with others? And then have you had the experience where others showed up in this way with you? I'm willing to bet if you are being really honest with yourself, the answer to both of those questions is yes. And then I want you to think, how did I feel in those moments? When somebody else showed up in this way with me, how did I feel? At least some of the time, probably if you're being really honest with yourself, most of the time, misunderstood, unheard, lonely, disconnected, like no one gets it, inadequate for not getting over it, maybe too emotional. I'm not saying all of these, but maybe some of that is what's come up for you. So as humans, we don't just interrupt emotions, we also try to prevent them. Okay. And a lot of times people do everything they can to prevent the emotions from happening in the first place. And I'm going to give a few examples. And as you listen to these, I really encourage you to be honest with yourself, open your heart, open your mind, and ask yourself, where have I shown up in this way? Okay. Avoiding difficult conversations because we don't want somebody to feel hurt. Saying yes when we really want to say no because we don't want them to feel sad or rejected or disappointed. Over explaining because we don't want someone to misunderstand us. So we're managing everyone else's emotional experience because somewhere along the way, we learned and concluded if someone is upset, I did something wrong. If someone's upset, I'm not good enough. If someone's disappointed, I've failed. If someone's hurting, I'm responsible to make it feel better. And so without realizing it, the vast majority of people, at least in my community, become emotional managers instead of showing up authentically in relationships. And I want to be super clear because there's this voice popping up in my head right now that I don't want you to misinterpret this. I'm not saying, oh yeah, just show up like a jerk, okay? And don't have any care about other people. No. What I am saying is show up in a clear, direct, and non-defensive way. And trust that people can handle themselves. Trust that people can handle their emotions. Trust that they can handle life without you saving them. I mean, by golly, they have lived decades doing that. Now, you might say, well, they don't handle it well. Yeah, and if you steal that experience from them, are they going to learn to handle it any better? No. What would become available to you if you trusted that people could handle themselves, their emotions, and life? Healing is not just learning, to trust yourself with your own emotions, but it's learning to trust that the people that you love, that surround you, they're capable of experiencing theirs too. And when you experience your emotions, that's what we refer to as emotional capacity. And there's a way for every single person on this planet to expand their emotional capacity and really embody that sadness isn't dangerous. Disappointment isn't dangerous. Feeling rejected isn't dangerous. Fear isn't dangerous. Anger isn't dangerous. Grief isn't dangerous. I could list on and on and on. They're just human emotions. They're not emergencies, and we don't need to prevent them. And when your nervous system begins to learn that, I promise you that everything changes. You stop abandoning yourself, ignoring what you want in order to protect other people who don't need to be protected. You stop planning your life around preventing discomfort in yourself and other people. You stop confusing emotions with danger. You stay connected to yourself. You stay connected to other people. You stay connected to what you actually want, and you trust that you've got this. You can handle this. I want to leave you with one question today, and I encourage you just to take the time to journal around it. It could be really easy to listen to this and then get distracted and do something else, but take the time, give yourself this gift. 7 minutes, less if you want, 3 minutes. Here it is. How much of your life and or your energy have you spent trying to protect yourself and others around from feeling uncomfortable emotions? How much of your life? How much of your energy? Just sit with that. And you may find that your answer explains a whole lot more about your anxiety than your anxiety itself. And one of the biggest shifts that I've been seeing lately inside of Brave Academy is that when you stop fearing emotions, you stop interrupting them, you stop making decisions in order to avoid them, magic happens. And instead, you build the capacity to stay connected to yourself, to become someone who trusts herself to feel through that cycle. I would need to start sharing more wins on the podcast because we have so many, several coming in sometimes every day, where women are just astounded by the progress that they're making so quickly compared to other approaches that they've used, like talk therapy and things like that. It makes such a difference. And if today's episode resonated with you, you're going to get so much out of my free workshop, the Anxiety Relief Experience. Over 3 days, I'm going to show you why anxiety keeps happening. This is a piece of it, what I talked about today, why managing symptoms hasn't created lasting change, and why healing starts somewhere completely different than the vast majority of people have been taught. And you can grab your free spot by using the link in the show notes, or just send me a DM on Instagram or on Facebook with the word workshop, and I'll send it to you personally. You've got this. I'll see you next Tuesday.